So, in light of the recent resurgence of interest in this couple, I thought I'd delve into the Synastry chart of JFK Jr. and Carolyn Bessette Kennedy today. If you enjoy this kind of astrological content, be sure to follow along and let me know who you'd like me to cover next. John is in blue, he's the inner ring here, and Carolyn is in red. There are many karmic indicators in the Synastry chart. Karmic meaning these individuals have known each other before, likely through many lifetimes, and most likely in an intimate way. And they've come back to work through the issues that they were unable to resolve in previous lifetimes. So anyone saying, oh, she should have never gotten involved with him, this, that, and the other, they were absolutely fated to have met. So the first aspect that caught my eye is John's South Node being conjunct Carolyn's Saturn. The South Node is where we've been, both the lessons we've mastered and behavior that we are ready to outgrow. And Saturn acts as a sort of alarm bell in the birth chart. It's a point of limitation, restriction, hard lessons, and what we are called to deal with in this lifetime. It's considered karmic because this placement can really show us where we have fallen short or mishandled responsibilities in previous lifetimes. When the South Node touches another person's planet in a Synastry chart, the energy is very, very familiar. But one or both partners can feel held back in the relationship. And when the South Node touches Saturn, the South Node person can sort of hold back the Saturn person in their lower evolutionary state of Saturn. So fears, instability, lack of discipline, lack of structure, and really when they're supposed to be mastering this Saturn placement. This configuration can hold back the Saturn person in these lower evolutionary behaviors of Saturn. And by the same token, the Saturn person can attempt to act as a sort of strict taskmaster to the South Node person in order to help them grow past these South Node tendencies, but the South Node person may be inclined to not take the Saturn person so seriously. If this conjunction, this aspect is not actively worked on, both of these individuals can feel held back by this position and get stuck in a sort of karmic loop where the South Node person continues to behave according to their South Node behaviors and attitudes, and the Saturn person can get stuck with that lack of discipline, that lack of hard work in their Saturn placement that they're supposed to be growing towards. The next major karmic indicator that I've noticed is Carolyn's South Node being conjunct John's Sun. As previously discussed, the South Node is the life experience that we've mastered and the behaviors that we're ready to move away from. And the Sun represents the ego, the will, and the fulfillment of our potential. With this position, John's ego tends to bring out the behaviors and attitudes that hold Carolyn back. While Carolyn is comfortable with John's energy and it's very familiar to her, this relationship has the potential to hold Carolyn back in her South Node energy. A lot of it depends on how John is as a Sagittarius sun. So if he is in his own lower vibrational tendencies of a Sagittarian, meaning he's engaging in chaotic behavior, a non-committal attitude, rudeness disguised as honesty, she is more likely to stay stuck in this South Node Sagittarian energy. But from what we know about John in his lifetime, he was a very chaotic individual. So I bet that this relationship sort of served to hold her back. Lastly, in the realm of true karmic indicators, John's Saturn is conjunct Carolyn's Sun in Capricorn. Now, Saturn represents, again, what we're supposed to grow towards through discipline and consistent hard work, and the Sun represents intrinsically who we are in this lifetime. This aspect can be particularly hard for the Saturn person because the Saturn person may easily feel insecure in the presence of the Sun person, because the Sun person already embodies what the Saturn person is supposed to learn in this lifetime. Unless the Saturn person can adequately humble themselves and realize there's a lot to be learned from the Sun person, it's likely that the Saturn person will end up feeling insecure in the Sun's presence. The Saturn person may turn to criticism, belittling, coldness towards the Sun person in light of their insecurity. This position can really feel like cold water is being splashed onto the Sun because of all this coldness coming from Saturn. Now we're going to move on to some more personal planet aspects that give more flavor and understanding to the types of karmic behaviors John and Carolyn were attempting to work through in this relationship. We know that fights between the two were pretty frequent and at times explosive. One aspect that can be indicative of this energy includes Carolyn's moon being conjunct John's Mars. This is a very charged aspect between personal planets that can indicate incredible sexual attraction and intensity, but often with a degree of volatility. It's particularly potent in a heterosexual relationship, or a relationship where the more feminine individual is represented by the moon, in this case Carolyn, and the more male or masculine individual is represented by Mars, which is John. It's emotional sensitivity meets raw drive and passion. You may be able to see how this would make for a very sexy union. But the challenge with this aspect is that the passions often extend to more than just sexuality. Arguments can turn heated and feel very, very personal very fast. Carolyn can feel like John isn't careful or thoughtful enough with his actions. Like, he doesn't take her feelings into consideration before he acts. And when Carolyn confronts John with her feelings, he can get angry. Mars on the moon can sometimes feel like agitating the emotional wounds or pouring salt into the emotional wounds. John, in turn, can feel like his actions are overly scrutinized and that Carolyn is overly sensitive to his actions. The second personal planet aspect I'd like to mention is Carolyn's Mars squaring up with John's Mercury. This aspect is more clearly indicative of toxic or volatile fights, more than the Moon-Mars conjunction alone. Now, natally, Carolyn's Mars is conjunct her ascendant, which makes her a very driven, action-oriented, and perhaps at times aggressive individual. Squaring John's Mercury indicates that there is tension between the way Carolyn shows up in the world and the way that John thinks. And John's Mercury in Scorpio makes him more introverted and secretive about his innermost thoughts in the third house. And something about Carolyn showing up in the world with an Aquarian style Martian energy, he probably took offense and felt a loss of a sense of control in this relationship, as the Uranian Aquarian energy can be very unpredictable, and Scorpio does not like unpredictable. Scorpio likes outcomes they can anticipate, and as Scorpio and Aquarius are both fixed signs, neither one of them wants to budge from their modus operandi. Some fights probably revolved around John criticizing Carolyn's style of action and Carolyn wanting John to loosen up in what she perceived to be rigid and tightly controlled thinking. One last topic I wanted to touch on was a part of their synastry that seems to allude to their tragic and most unfortunate end. I don't know if Love Story touches on this at all, probably not. But close friends of JFK Jr. have said that they believe he had, for lack of a better term, a death wish. He was constantly engaging in extremely physically risky undertakings, which a number of them had gotten him injured, and professionals had advised him to not get involved with time and time again. Now, this is pure speculation, but perhaps with his Scorpio Mercury in the third being conjunct to Neptune, death, which is ruled by Scorpio, and the glamorization or fantasizing of death as an escape potentially was on his mind even subconsciously. Glamorizing, fantasy, escape, the subconscious, these are all the realms of Neptune. Perhaps this possible glamorizing of death, this subconscious death wish, was affecting his decision making. I also have to mention, given how they both passed, I find it very peculiar that his Mercury-Neptune conjunction in Scorpio lands in Carolyn's 9th house of long-distance travel. We know that John was piloting the plane with Carolyn and her sister on board over the waters by Martha's Vineyard when the crash occurred. Could his possible death wish have been a determining factor in her untimely death aboard that plane? I just find the fact that their synastry echoes what happened with that plane so interesting. It really goes to show that astrology leaves no stone unturned. Overall, this is an absolutely fascinating synastry, an incredibly karmic relationship. Let me know in the comments what couple or individual you'd like me to cover next.